Before the first note even leaves her lips, Simon Cowell looks away. By the time she finishes, his eyes are filled with disbelief. What happens next leaves the entire America's Got Talent audience frozen in silence. This is the story of a poor Filipino girl whose voice was so powerful, so raw that people said even Miley Cyrus herself would be proud. If stories of impossible dreams, hidden talent, and emotional twists inspire you, make sure you subscribe now and stay with us till the end, because this journey will stay in your heart long after the final note fades. Her name was Liana Grace Cruz, and until the day she stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, the world had never heard her voice. Not because it wasn't extraordinary, but because life had never given her the space to be heard. Liana was born in a small coastal village in the Philippines, a place where mornings began with the sound of fishing boats and nights ended with the hum of tired generators. Her home was a one-room wooden shack patched together by her father's hands, standing just strong enough to survive the storms that came every year. Music entered Liana's life before she could even understand what it was. Her mother used to sing while washing clothes by the river, old Filipino lullabies mixed with whatever Western song she heard on a crackling radio. One day when Liana was 6 years old, a song played that changed something inside her. It was a Miley Cyrus song drifting through the air from a neighbor's radio. Liana didn't know English well, but the emotion in the voice felt like it was speaking directly to her heart. From that moment on, she tried to copy the sounds, the power, the feeling, singing quietly so no one would tell her to stop. Life, however, was not gentle with Liana. When she was 9, her father was injured in a fishing accident that left him unable to work. Her mother began taking laundry jobs, and Liana started selling small snacks after school to help pay for rice and electricity. Singing became something she did alone late at night when the house was quiet and the world felt less heavy. She would stand outside under the stars and sing softly, pretending she was on a big stage somewhere far away. The first twist in her story came when her mother fell ill. Hospital bills began piling up, and Liana stopped going to school regularly. Music felt selfish then, like a dream she could no longer afford. She considered giving it up completely. But one night while waiting outside the hospital, she sang quietly to calm herself. A nurse passing by stopped and listened. That nurse later told her something that Liana would never forget. She said, "That voice like that does not belong in silence." Years passed, and the idea of America's Got Talent seemed impossible. Liana didn't even own a passport, but a local charity worker heard her sing during a small community event and recorded a short video. That video somehow reached someone connected to AGT auditions abroad. When the invitation came, Liana thought it was a mistake. She cried, laughed, and then cried again. The problem was money. There was none. Neighbors helped. Donations came in small amounts. Her mother sold her wedding ring. Every peso carried a piece of hope. The journey to America was the farthest Liana had ever traveled. The city lights overwhelmed her. The AGT theater felt like another world, filled with confident performers, glittering costumes, and loud voices. Liana wore a simple dress borrowed from a charity group. Her hands shook as she waited backstage. She had never sung into a professional microphone. She had never stood in front of judges whose opinions could change her life in seconds. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage slowly, blinking against the bright lights. Simon Cowell looked down at his notes. Sophia smiled gently. Howie leaned forward. Terry Crews asked her where she was from, and when she said the Philippines, the audience applauded. Politely. Simon asked why she chose to come. Liana hesitated, then said she was singing for her mother, who was watching from a hospital bed back home. Then came the moment no one expected. The song she chose was a Miley Cyrus ballad, known for its emotional depth and vocal power. Some people in the audience exchanged doubtful looks. It was a risky choice. Even Simon raised an eyebrow. The music started, and for the first few seconds, Liana's voice was soft, almost fragile. It sounded like fear, like someone afraid to take up space. And then something changed. Her voice rose, not in volume alone, but in emotion. Pain, hope, love, and years of silence poured into every note. The room transformed. Conversation stopped. Judges froze. Simon slowly looked up. The control, the rasp, the raw honesty in her voice shocked everyone. It didn't sound like an imitation. It sounded like truth. Like a young girl telling her entire life story in 3 minutes. Halfway through the song, Liana closed her eyes. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice never broke. When she reached the final note, she held it with a strength that felt impossible for someone so young. The silence afterward was heavy, almost sacred. Then the audience erupted. People stood, some cried openly. Simon didn't clap immediately, he just stared. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. He said he had heard that song many times by many artists, but never like that. He said it felt honest, and honesty cannot be taught. Sophia told Liana that her voice carried both suffering and hope, and that was rare. Howie said the performance gave him chills. Terry wiped his eyes. Another twist came when Simon said something unexpected. He said the performances like that remind him why the show exists. He said that fame is not the goal, but moments like these are. People online later said that even Miley Cyrus herself would be proud of what Liana had done with that song. But the journey didn't end there. Backstage, Liana collapsed into tears. She called her mother, who watched the audition on a shared television in the hospital ward. Nurses gathered around. Her mother cried and said she could finally breathe again, knowing her daughter's voice had reached the world. As the show aired, Liana's story spread across America and beyond. People searched for her name. Donations flooded in for her mother's treatment. Messages arrived from aspiring singers who saw themselves in her struggle. But fame also brought pressure. Liana faced criticism, comparisons, and expectations. She almost broke under the weight of it all. In the next round, she nearly quit. She felt she had already given everything she had. But remembering the nurse's words, remembering her mother's sacrifice, she stepped forward again. This time, she sang an original song about home, about storms, about voices lost and found. It wasn't as loud, but it was just as powerful. Win or lose, Liana had already changed her life. She returned to the Philippines later, not as a celebrity, but as a symbol of possibility. A new roof was built for her family. Her siblings returned to school. She continued singing, studying, and growing, no longer afraid to be heard. Her AGT audition became one of those moments people replay years later, not because of perfection, but because of truth. A poor Filipino girl walked onto a stage meant for giants and reminded the world that talent does not ask where you come from. It simply asks to be heard.